Obsolescence.
Yes, that's what it is. It's the 2020 iMac, and it literally can't even function anymore. Like everything I do is spinny wheel forever. And like, there's nothing saved on it, space. It just is what it is.
I think we're live.
I had a Dell computer growing up that lasted our whole family for like 15 years. It ran perfectly the whole time.
They don't make them how they used to.
They don't make them how they used to. All right, I think we're live, yeah?
Yeah, we are live.
Cool.
This is a Dell commercial. Buy yours now.
Well, welcome YouTube to our live conversation today. I have two of my very best friends joining me, Jason Shurka and Brandon Bozarth. And we're, as many of you know, we're sort of promoting our new show, Hidden Revelations, that is coming out tomorrow. And we are releasing episode 1 and episode 2 tomorrow. I just found that out through Jason, which is really exciting. Episode 1 will be open to the public. Yeah, Jason?
Yep.
Cool. So I think I'll probably post it on my YouTube channel if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we should all premiere it everywhere and just kind of really get it out. It's an awesome episode. I forgot everything we spoke about until I went and re-listened to it because of the place that we were in when it was happening. But yeah,
we were in a total flow state, channeling state for sure.
Awesome.
But so we're gonna post that everywhere tomorrow, so you guys can watch it and get a feel for if it's your flavor and if you want to commit to watching the full 8-part series on the UNIFYD platform. But today we're sort of going to jam on one of our favorite topics to jam on whenever we're together, which is ancient civilizations, forgotten history, ancient human timelines, and all the kind of things we do talk about in Hidden Revelations. So where do you guys want to start with this? And doing some lives this week talking about it, but it's one of those topics we could just go on forever, I think.
100%. Brandon, you have a starting point?
Yeah, I love the context that you shared before, Aaron, where we believe we're the peak of human evolution and that all of nature has like conspired to create us as these supreme beings. And that's one version of Earth, a context of living in. And the truth, the reality is there are many cycles and have been many cycles of peak civilizations dating back hundreds of thousands of years, which is more than 10 times longer than modern civilization or modern history kind of paints the picture of. So I'd love to hear, Aaron, actually your take on that and how that connects to the law of one.
Yeah. Well, I posted a video recently. It was actually the first episode of my spiritual intelligence series where I talked about how human civilizations have risen and fallen likely for, honestly, no one even knows how long. Hundreds of thousands of years, could be millions of years. We have a lot of different, what they call out of place artifacts that show clear human intelligence and technology dating back to even hundreds of millions of years ago, which I know is quite a mind blower because, you know, we're taught in our modern science that we've only been around for a couple 100,000 years and definitely went around during the dinosaurs and all of that. But, you know, we have these artifacts that you just kind of go, I don't know what to do with that. Like the iron hammer that was found in Texas that is in 300 million year old strata. And it's a perfectly built iron hammer with a hole drilled in it for the wood mallet to go through. And we could go on and on. There's hundreds of these artifacts that place intelligent human civilization way farther than we can conceive of. And so I sort of talked about this idea of IQ versus SQ, if we could say masculine and feminine energies. If a civilization outpaces their SQ with IQ, then probably what happens is they use their technology immorally from, all the corrupt means we see happening today for wealth and power and conquering, and then wind up in some nuclear holocaust or whatever and wipe each other out. And then if the SQ outpaces the IQ too much, then it's likely that after 10 or 20,000 years, we know that there's these kind of natural disaster events, whether an ice age or a meteor or a famine or whatever. And if a society sort of like Ra's society on Venus is highly philosophical and spiritually oriented, then they don't develop the technology necessary to protect themselves and even predict these kind of climactic events from happening, and then they get wiped out. So the theory is that perhaps this version of human civilization is, one of a dozen or more that have risen and fallen for these various reasons. And we're now at the precipice of the IQ outpacing the SQ scenario, where we've got to integrate the feminine, we've got to integrate spirituality and oneness before we destroy ourselves. And I think things look hopeful. I'll put it that way. Yes, there's a lot of nonsense going around on Earth and corruption and whatnot, but I think there's enough people awake now that we're going to finally learn this lesson and evolve into the next density level of consciousness. And I think that makes sense, right? Because we do that individually through the reincarnation model. It takes us many, many, many tries over and over again, many lifetimes, many incarnations before we learn those lessons the right way and can finally pass that test. I think from a civilization standpoint, humanity is also a kind of entity, right? Then we probably do the same thing as a civilization. We rise and we fall, and we have many, many attempts to construct a real enlightened civilization that can actually last and thrive and move out into the cosmos. So that's kind of the way that I see it.
I learned something really interesting just about 48 hours ago, because I filmed Disclosure 3 with Ray, and we were talking about something that I don't even know how it came up, but I want to connect it to what you just said. So pretty much when it comes to, call it like forgotten history and all that, it's important to know the greatness that we've achieved. It's important to know the horrors that we've inflicted upon ourselves, but it's also important to know what happened and what didn't happen. And I'm going to give you a perfect example, because you brought something up that I would have never paid attention to if I didn't have that interview with Ray on Saturday. And one of the examples that you brought up was a meteor, right? So he says that a meteor over, I believe he says 100 feet, it's an impossibility for it to hit the earth. And I said, how could you say something like that? Forget what they say about the dinosaurs and all that. How can you possibly say something like that? And he says, because there's something you have to understand about the secrets of the core of the planet that you live on and the core of all other planets. Specifically when it comes to Earth, again, we would have known this if we knew our history, but we don't know this because history was erased. According to what he says in this interview, he says that the core of Earth, it's pretty much called like there's electromagnetic energy there, magnets, in other words. And when a meteor is coming, especially a massive one, it also has its own force and its own electromagnetic field. What happens when you take two magnets with the same poles and try to hit them? They repel. He says that's how it works in the universe. According to him, and the information that he shares from remembered history that was taken out of the collective, it's impossible, forget for a massive comet to hit Earth, or a meteor to hit Earth, I should say, but it's impossible for two planets to collide because it's just not the way that creation works. It's not how the universe is built. But because we don't know our true history, there, so long as you want to believe what was just said, we're able to believe things that may be physically not possible according to the laws of creation because we don't know our own history. So it's like, that's just one little thing that changed my, and I accepted it. It's up to everybody if they want to accept that as a truth or not. I chose at this point to accept what he said as a truth because of the many experiences that I've had with him. And it makes a lot of sense with the whole magnet thing.
Yeah.
So it then changes our whole history of, well, wait a second. Okay. Dinosaurs extinct, meteor. What happened? I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea. All I know is that we don't know what happened. And the other thing that I know is that if we do know what happened, we'd be able to learn a lot about that. And we'd be able to know a lot about our own history. So the fact that we don't know so much actually makes us the least advanced as we've ever been, not the most. I know everybody says cutting edge technology with medicine, technology, and all that. We're as primitive as it gets right now.
Yeah.
Because we forgot our highest heights, and our highest heights are bridging the spirit with the physical. Because like you said, if you allow technological developments, physical technological developments, to surpass and guide instead of your spiritual development, you're going to end up wiping yourself out. And we know about Atlantis. And I'm sure that there were many civilizations where that happened over and over and over and over again. So it's like, imagine how much more advanced we actually would be if we understood that, if we understood that the physical emerges out of the spiritual or the intangible, and if we actually knew our fullest potential. And the last example I would give is, look what happens when somebody breaks a Guinness World Record. Suddenly, a lot more people are able to do it. And a lot more people are able to do it because somebody exhibited that it is absolutely possible. And when one person shows it's possible, it leads to other people to undoubtedly believe, oh, he or she could do it, so I can do it. And then suddenly they can do it. So it's the same thing for everything else in the world. If we suddenly knew that our ancestors were not cavemen, but were advanced in different ways, spiritually speaking, we'd be in a completely different place today.
Mm. Yeah, and I wonder if our belief, I mean, there's no way to know this now, but our belief in something collectively can override, like you said, the core of the earth that has a natural repulsion. Well, when we believe something, we become magnetized to certain things. So this collective belief overriding, what I'm hearing is, left in its natural state, these planets would be clear of most things that are cataclysmic. Mm-hmm. And even Bashar talks about in the fall of Atlantis, they weren't struck by one big meteor. It was 10 years of smaller meteors, like showers on the Earth. 10 years. Mm. And that's why it's very hard to find, because imagine 10 years, every other day having hundreds of meteors, for 10 years. They might have been small, but that's going to do some serious damage. One more thing I want to point out about history, why it's important, especially on Earth. Bashar and other extraterrestrials have referred to Earth as the karma burner, or the recycling bin of the galaxy, where you can go through cycle after cycle, and where other extraterrestrials can make connections, typically with their DNA. And that's why, Bashar has shared, and a lot of other sources have shared, that we have all sorts of extraterrestrial DNA. Pleiadian, Sirius, Asasani, Anunnaki, all the beings. And that's kind of like their foothold to allow them to experience more strongly polarity in a way that's not available in their reality through us, because we have a very unique planet of cycles where, because of the tilt of our axis, we have a lot more seasons than many other planets. The way we've set up time, cycles within cycles, 60 seconds within a minute, within an hour, within a day, all of that is apparently very unique to Earth. And it gives an opportunity that's like a physical echo or manifestation of the archetype of Earth, which is to be able to really learn like the mechanics of the creation process. And that means really getting in touch with density, really getting in touch with polarity, to become not masters of limitation that are being limited, but masters of limitation, to become masterful over the energy or the idea of limitation. And by doing so, we're teaching, hundreds and hundreds of different civilizations, because that level of density is not available in their reality. And so to them, we're considered a master class, not a kindergarten. We might say that, and we might have that experience, but to them, they go, well, the soul that would incarnate is a masterful soul, and the lessons you're learning are at the master level, and that requires a really high degree of forgetfulness. And that's why it seems like we're all in a kindergarten, but only a masterful soul would do that. So that gives a different context and can answer questions, I wouldn't say at the ultimate level of reality, but at the relative level of reality. Why are we here? What's it all about? What's the purpose? What is Earth all about? What should I focus on in my life? Going through these themes and challenges. Oh, that's why I came here, to learn how to forgive, to learn how to let go of my negative belief system that keeps me locked into patterns. And that takes the focus from external to internal. And really the uniting message of our texts, talking about ancient history or war, whatever it is, technology, it really comes back to that. And that's what I love about our series.
Yeah, and we get into this conversation in one of the episodes. It might have been the spiritual technology episode, but I want to throw a couple of theories out to you guys based on what Jason and Brandon just said. And these are just my theories based on teachings that the Law of One puts forth in terms of the metaphysics of the universe and polarity. Let's go to the meteor thing first. I know it stretches our conception of reality a lot to say that, oh, maybe meteor strikes don't happen. Maybe we've been lied about that or something. But there is a way I can see that this might actually work metaphysically, because Ra says that our planet, the lifespan on planet Earth dropped by over 10-fold because of the polarity, the charge of consciousness diminishing on our planet because of war and tribalism and genocide and whatnot. So the lifespan of third density is supposed to be about 1,000 years in all of the universe, but on our planet, it's only like 70 to 100 years at best. And so Ra said this was actually the whole reason we came to Egypt, right? Was because we saw them kind of stuck in this perpetual spiritual childhood. They couldn't live past 30, 35 because of the nature of the diseases and stuff in the Nile River at the time or whatever. So they wanted to come and teach them healing practices through crystals and pyramids and how to extend the lifespan of the body. So we know that the polarity of the Earth can dramatically affect the longevity of life on Earth. Wouldn't it also make sense that it could affect the magnetic field of the planet as well? Now, we know that the positive polarity is radiating or outward moving, right? And the negative polarity is inward facing or magnetic, inward moving. So if the planet's highly positively polarized, I can see it creating a kind of electromagnetic charge that is outward pushing, right? Sending energy out, which creates that kind of barrier, energetic barrier, to where meteors and other whatever objects in the cosmos would kind of be propelled away from that energy field. But if the magnetic field drops, because the polarity drops and it's becoming more negative, it's actually inviting cataclysmic events towards the planet. The negative polarity is magnetic, right?
So the meteors are probably positively charged because they have exploded outwards from a source, right? They're in a expanding
could be
kind of energy.
That could be how it works. And maybe meteors are more positive or negative polarized. And depending on the polarization of the meteor, that can affect it.
I guess it can also depend on the metals on that meteor, because there are always metals on the meteor, so it was really just, I think it was like a 2-minute portion of a 3-hour interview. And I have to go back and watch it as it's being edited as well to learn and then have a decent conversation about what that actually means.
Yeah. Even 100-foot meteor, like you said, Jason, can leave an enormous crater in the planet. Huge. Yeah. Thousands of times larger than the object probably.
But it won't destroy the planet. That's what he's saying. You can have a hit by even a 60-footer. It's going to do crazy hits. Yeah. But it's not going to destroy the planet. According to what he's saying, the only way for a planet to be destroyed is from within its core. Right. It will be destroyed from within, not from another planet coming to hit it.
Or to destroy a species, right, on the entire planet.
Yeah.
The other theory I have is about the ET involvement from that Brandon was just talking about. There's a lot of evidence that we can look at to say, it looks like there might have been some ET involvement in our genetic process, right? Greg Braden talks about this. The 24th chromosome literally has been snipped and then added to the 23rd or something like that. And scientists are totally baffled. Like, we have no clue how that could happen naturally, but it must have, because evolution's our model. And I think what happened is, as all these timelines say, the raw material, Bashar, pyramid code, and many others say that ETs have been, not interfering, but being involved in this planet and our species and genetics for a long time. It could actually be this very reason, right? That we have destroyed ourselves over and over and over and over. And ETs are watching us going through cycle after cycle. A fourth density ET lives 90,000 years. A sixth density lives 10 million or something like that. So they're around for a long time observing our planet. And after watching so many cycles of us rising and falling, they're like, maybe we should help them out, right? Let's just do a tiny adjustment to their DNA that will allow the size of the brain to grow larger and they can become more self-aware and whatnot. I can see that being another reason why they were actually doing so, not just to experiment or see what this would be like or that, but literally to actually save our species.
Yeah, and what's interesting, Bashar said that the adjustment occurred without the consideration of enhancing the size of the birth canal. And that's why we're the only mammal that has really intense, long, painful birth. If you look at any other mammal, it's pretty much, pretty fast, usually within minutes when they're ready. So just another kind of inconsistency. If that naturally evolved that way, then we would have naturally, like every other animal on the planet, evolved the size of what would it be? I don't know, cervix or the whole thing, the whole package would have evolved naturally. Just
right.
like
that would make sense.
Yeah.
It's very interesting that you say that, because in episode 2 of Hidden Revelations, from the pyramid code side, and we connected this to, I think, what Bashar calls the Polarians, if I remember correctly. But in the pyramid code, it speaks about this race called the original divine race. And listen to what it says. It says, the initial race was a conscious race with appreciation, love, and understanding for the divine plane and the laws of nature. I'm talking about a very far away era, way before Atlantis or Adam and Eve. Another hint of history, by the way. I'm talking about a community that was naturally conscious and enlightened, without desires and impulses as we have in our current days. This was a race that was fully aware. This was a race that knew the secrets of nature and understood the secrets of creation. This was a race that had no boundaries, one that was characterized with a direct divine connection to the Creator. This was a race that knew how to control and guide nature. This was a race that did not have to work for their livelihood and did not have pain during childbirth.
There you go.
Well, Ra even says that long ago, before the veiling process, third density beings like you and I had total control and volition over our sense perceptions and could shut off pain mentally whenever we want. So childbirth wouldn't have any pain, right? You still would feel the pain to get the message the body's sending you. And you say, thanks, body, got the message, going to cut that signal off now. But because we've become so separate, right, from our bodies, now it's like it's as if there's a miscommunication where the body just keeps sending the signal. But the body's just really a feedback device for the spirit and the mind. So you're the one who's supposed to cut off the signal, but we feel separate from our bodies, right? So we just don't think it's even possible. But there's monks and yogis who can do this. They can regulate their skin temperature. They can shut off pain. They can walk on hot coals and nails and whatnot. So I think we're remembering those abilities as we move into a fourth density vibration.
It's awesome stuff.
I want to bring one more thing in too, to give more credibility to this idea that human civilizations have been far more intelligent, far longer ago than we have any clue of, and perhaps have wiped ourselves out with technology like we have today with nuclear warfare and whatnot. Some of you listening will probably know about this. There's a sort of infamous passage from the ancient Indian text called the Mahabharata, which is the text I believe that the Bhagavad Gita comes from. And it's this sort of Indian epic about this ancient war that took place between two cousins who were family members who had opposing civilizations, and they went to war with one another. And the text is describing the most perfect, articulate description of a atom bomb or a nuclear bomb that you've ever heard written. And you read and go, wow, what an amazing description of a nuclear bomb. Only problem is this text is over 5,000 years old and has been written in the, dates back in the Sanskrit language to over 5,000 years ago. And this was a passage we didn't really know what it meant until the 20th century when we invented the atom bomb. And then all of a sudden you read this passage and go, what? Like, wait a minute. There's no way that they're describing what I think they're describing. Now you could say, oh, maybe someone saw a prophetic vision of the future. Okay, maybe. But when you read the Mahabharata, it's very clear that they're describing a war that took place between these two families, which you'll hear about in the text. And so I'm going to read this for you. I'm actually going to share my screen so you guys can read it along with me. But one more caveat is that we do have multiple impact sites on planet Earth that look like they could be meteor strikes where a meteor impacted the planet. But the problem is there's no materials of a meteor strike. And that's what you would expect to see, like we have found in many places on our planet. There's no trace of that at all. And it really just looks like a nuclear detonation site. So that's one of those kind of out of place artifacts that I've talked about. But I'm going to share my screen so you guys can read this with me. I'm going to minimize that. Okay, so again, this is a 5,000-year-old passage. It says, a single projectile charged with all the power of the universe, an incandescent column of smoke and flame as bright as 1,000 suns, rose in all of its splendor. A perpendicular explosion with its billowing smoke clouds. The cloud of smoke rising after its first explosion formed into expanding round circles, like the opening of giant parasols. Parasol, like a parachute type of device. It was an unknown weapon, an iron thunderbolt, a gigantic messenger of death, which reduced to ashes the entire race of the Vrishis and the Andakas. The corpses were so burned as to be unrecognizable. The hair and nails fell out. Pottery broke without apparent cause, and the birds turned white. After a few hours, all foodstuffs were infected. To escape this fire, the soldiers threw themselves in streams to wash themselves and their equipment. Mic drop.
Yeah.
Crazy, man.
It's wild.
Have you guys seen the show Chernobyl?
No.
Oh man, it's a must watch. One of the most incredible shows I've ever seen. But it's an HBO 5-part series that sort of is a remake of the actual Chernobyl event, where the nuclear site detonated from within itself and spread nuclear energy. I can't remember what it's called, radiation all throughout Ukraine, and they had to clear like how many square miles around the site. And to this day, you can't go there because the radiation will poison your body and kill you.
Bashar said something like it was 4 times or more than that, maybe even like 8 times worse than they actually let it off to be.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
And you see everything that was just described in the Mahabharata, that 5,000-year-old passage we just read. The birds turned white, everything turned to ash, the food was infected, the soldiers were trying to wash themselves. That's everything that happens in that show, because nobody understood nuclear radiation back then. So they were literally working on the nuclear site that was damaged while it was, billowing clouds of nuclear gas going up in the air. And they have no clue that they're just incinerating themselves from the inside out. And slowly they're like, and their skin's red and stuff. That's exactly what is just described in that text. And basically it's saying that one of these families used this weapon against the other family and wiped them out. And so, there you go again. What do you do with that, right? How do you explain that if intelligent human civilization has only existed for 5,000 years? Apparently we had nukes over 5,000 years ago, and that technology was somehow lost and then recreated. And interestingly enough, the scientist who made the atom bomb, we talked about this, Jason.
Yeah.
I can't remember his name offhand, but I think he was a German scientist. He was sort of forced into making it. They hired him and said, hey, we want you to make this weapon.
Oppenheimer.
Thank you, Robert Oppenheimer. And he has some famous quotes where he quotes the Bhagavad Gita, of course, in that famous black and white video when they say, hey, how'd you feel when you saw your weapon go off and it worked? And he quotes that line of like, I have become death, the destroyer of worlds. But then they also say, how does it feel to be the first person to ever create a nuclear weapon? And his literal response was, not the first, but the most recent.
Whoa.
Like, how did this guy know this back then? It's crazy.
Interesting. Very interesting. They know, man. They know. It's
somebody knows.
They gotta know. Somebody's gotta know, because it keeps being passed down somehow. And if it's not even physically passed down, then I can almost guarantee, like I would confidently say that even somebody like Einstein, he probably got a lot of things through his dreams, and he just didn't say that because people would think he's a psycho. You know, I got a lot of things through dreams that were like real. I'm sure a lot of people have that in the professional world, and they're just afraid to say it because they don't want to be scrutinized for it. So they're just like, yeah, you know, but I don't see any real other way unless it was really passed down. But it would just make sense that they were given messages somehow, or remembrances of reincarnations and things like that.
Yeah. And this is kind of the conspiracy theory, right? Of, okay, if people in power know about our history, or at least they know that it's nothing like what we're taught, then why? Why do they hide it from us? And I was talking with a friend yesterday who he really works in the family court system to try and help fathers who are trying to get custody of their kids. And as you know, the family court system is heinously corrupt and purposefully gives the mothers 100% rights to the kids, no matter what. And the dads just get screwed over and they have to fight, and spend so much money. And he says, it's not even a real court. None of the judges are actually valid judges. They just sort of pretend to be judges, and they put this fake performance on, and you just think you're in a real court system. So you follow the rules and you pay them the money for child support and stuff. But what they're doing is they're setting up a Ponzi scheme like Big Pharma does, like everything else in the world right now, where these sort of profiteering globalists have captured an industry like the court system, and they are using it to make tons of money. So they just give immediate rights to the mothers, to the kids. And then they tell the fathers, if you want any custody at all, you have to pay this much child support. And then the courts, or whoever owns the courts, takes like, 10 or 20%, or maybe 50%, I think, of those, child support payments for themselves. And they just do this to, millions of fathers every year. And so looking at that model, looking at Big Pharma, where we know that doctors in medical school are taught, and you guys, we all have many, many good friends who are doctors who've been to medical school. They all tell us, right? Day one, the professor gets up and says, nutrition isn't medical science. It has nothing to do with health. We're not going to talk about nutrition here. Here we talk about chemicals and drugs. Drugs are medicine. And they just indoctrinate these young medical students to believe that food and nutrition have nothing to do with health. Drugs are health. And so they become drug pushing sort of drug dealers posing as doctors their whole life. And they don't know it, right? They think they're helping people. And I'm not going to say every single pharmaceutical drug is bad or something. Sure, there might be some that are helpful, but we know that the vast majority are highly toxic, create way more side effects than they help anyone. And none of them actually help the cause of the illness. They just suppress and mute symptoms, which is a very bad thing to do with the body. So we know that that industry has been captured, and students who become doctors are taught these things, these indoctrinations. Why would we not believe it could have happened with history or any other sector of society, right? This kind of indoctrination can happen anywhere based upon the people at the very top of the pyramid who control these industries and run the world, so to speak. They can decide what trickles down because they have all the money, all the power. They say who's fired and who's hired. Mm-hmm. So I think, and I'd like to hear your take on this before we pitch the show. What do you think the reason is that people in positions of very great power do know that our history is vastly different than we're taught? Why would they want to hide that from us? What's the goal?
Go ahead, Jason.
Simplistically speaking, because the common theme that I see is if you want to control, you have to keep us weak. So of course there's divide and conquer, but there's also forget and you won't know your true power. So I think that just like there is divide and conquer to keep us weak, it plays listen, if I was a psychopath that wanted to control humanity, I would do that, because I wouldn't want people to know how powerful they once were,
100%,
to hinder them from becoming that powerful again. So if you put yourself in the shoes of those individuals with such intentions, that would be the right thing to do. They're doing it right. We just have to see through it, so simplistically, that's what I would say is probably one of many of the intentions.
Yeah. And to keep it short, fear. Fear is the ultimate reason. They fear losing power, which is obviously a very outdated belief system, that power is something that can be gained or lost, which means power is of this world. Power depends on circumstances. Power depends on outcomes, on what you have. And all of this is referring to the body as you. I have control of this. I am in this position. I am in this elected official. I have this amount of money. It's all tied to this world, such that their identity is completely tied to this world. And so there has to be a fundamental disconnection that they're all experiencing. Anyone who would seek power over someone else is doing that as a coping mechanism to deal with fundamental disconnection. And because they're not facing the disconnection and taking it to inquiry, which if they knew about my courses, then they could start taking them and we'd all be fine. Or errands, or they watch the show. But
nice
because
pitch.
they're not looking at the disconnection and dealing with it, what sustains the illusion is fear. So they have to. It's like if they don't have the tools, and trust me, if they had the tools, we like to think they have the tools, they ignore them. Having the tools means you're using the tools, or you don't actually understand the tools you have. Because if you actually understood the tools, you would see it's actually the path of least resistance to use the tools, aka to heal and to come back into your true self. So what's the reason? Fear, to integrate, to look at the shadow of disconnection, to question who and what they think they are, to redefine power and all of these outdated belief systems that have been on the planet for centuries. And that's why the best thing we could do in response to them is to be an example and say, hey, look, when I look at my fear, when I look at my disconnection, because you live in me, it's like how I see you is how I see me. So I'm going to clear up what's in here. And since I'm projecting you, when I shift, you shift. When enough of us shift, you shift. It's like Byron Katie said, I wanted the world to change, so I changed my beliefs about the world, and the world changed. And that's what the secret is. That's what fighting fire with water actually is. And that's what true power actually is. Because then you become unmanipulatable, fearless, courageous. You stand up for what's authentic and true to you, and for its own sake. Because it's who and what you are. And guess what? When you do that, you give permission to other people to do that. So,
yeah, well said. And I would say one other very likely reason is that, a narcissistic abuser, one of their main or initial strategies is always going to be to establish themselves as the carrier of light in the relationship. If you want anything good, if you want happiness, if you want freedom, you got to go through me. I'm the bearer of light. And so, collectively, from a power standpoint, the handful of global elites who sort of run the planet behind the curtain have done that very well, right? They've established this narrative that there's the experts, and then all of you useless eaters who are dumb and stupid and don't know anything, and anything you think that's in contradiction to what one of our experts says is definitely wrong. And actually, we're going to cancel you for saying it. You see, it's this kind of like illusion of authority they create. So we just continue to outsource our power, right, to these elites, these experts. Follow the science is what we've been heard parroting over and over the last 2 years, which we know really just means follow the latest propaganda, because all of the science has been conclusive really from the beginning, but it's been suppressed. because when the truth gets out, the people who have the illusion of power lose their power. Now I don't have to think I have to go to you to get the light that I can't get directly from source. Now I'm empowered and I know that the light is in me. So if they erase the history of very intelligent civilizations that have come before us, I mean, clearly civilizations that invented nuclear weapons, which is, very high scientific, requires very high scientific intelligence to do that. If we know these technologies have existed millennia in the past and we lost them and we're just now rediscovering them, how smart does that make our experts look? If we know that the things we're just now inventing, people invented thousands of years ago, all of a sudden we don't trust those experts so much anymore. And we feel empowered, like, no, we've been here how many times now? Like, this is just another cycle. But they don't want humanity to see that, right? We need to think that, no, we've just barely become intelligent 5,000 years ago. Before that, we were knuckle dragging morons, hiding in caves and eating sticks. So that's just kind of my theory on the whole thing too. But
hey man, I still eat sticks.
You still eat sticks? What's wrong with eating sticks? Before we go, I want to pitch it to Jason so you can kind of give people the rundown on Hidden Revelations and how they can watch it.
Yep. So pretty much everything you heard here and a whole lot more is spoken about in this 8-part series. Each episode, I would say, is about an hour plus. Some are about an hour 15. It's really just amazing material connecting a lot of different texts, Law of One, Pyramid Code, Bashar, and more that's spoken about. So tomorrow, there are actually 2 episodes coming out, episode 1 and 2. As Aaron said in the beginning, episode 1 is coming out for free for everybody. So anybody who wants to tune in, you can watch it on, I'm assuming, probably any one of our YouTube channels. I know I'm going to be premiering it tomorrow as well.
I'll be posting it.
And it's going to be everywhere. Episode 1, that one's all about origin stories, how the show came to being, and some information, a lot of information of what's going to be covered throughout the following 7 parts. And the purpose of that is twofold. Number one, to give you all a taste of what this is all about. If you're in alignment with it, if it resonates with you, you can watch the rest on UNIFYD Premium TV, or UNIFYD TV for short. But the second part is because there are some topics throughout the series that are not, call it healthy, not healthy, not allowed on these platforms.
Not healthy for the globalists.
Not healthy for the New World Order.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason why we put it there, coupled with the fact that, it supports the platform and it keeps it going and just supports everybody in their work while doing it. So episode 1 comes out tomorrow. I'm premiering it at 8 p.m. If you guys want to join me on that, on all platforms, I think that would be awesome.
Eastern time?
Eastern time, yeah. And episode 2 is called Forgotten History. So episode 2 to 8 is all coming out on UNIFYD TV. So we'll get on how to get there in a second. That's episode 2, all about forgotten history, which is a lot of what we spoke about today. Episode 3 is called Secrecy and the Freedom of Choice. Episode 4 is called Normalizing the Supernatural. Episode 5 is What About God? Speaking all about what is God? Where does all of that fit into the equation instead of just calling something New Age, as many people do, understanding how God fits into all of these conversations. Which is literally, by the way, in every part of the conversation. Episode 6 is called Spiritual Technology. Episode 7 is Where is the Proof? And lastly, episode 8 is New Age, dissolving New Age myths, explaining why what many people call New Age is actually very old. And it's time to bring all of that back in a very healthy, connected, and connected to source sort of way. So if anybody wants to check that out, number one, I'm sure there will be a link in the description below.
Yeah, as soon as we're done, I'll put that in there.
For sure. And regardless, you can go to unifyd.tv. When you join, just make sure to put the discount code where it says click here to enter your discount code. Put the discount code HR40, HR like Hidden Revelations 40, and you'll get 40% off the lifetime of your membership. And it's just a good time to join because it's the equivalent of pretty much like a Netflix membership in terms of price. Only you get access to this show and a bunch of other stuff. It's like hundreds of original and exclusive titles on there. And I think I covered it. So if you do want to sign up, unifyd.tv, join UNIFYD Premium TV, use the discount code HR40 for 40% off a lifetime of your membership, and you'll be on your way to be able to watch it tomorrow and every week as a new episode drops.
Yeah. And I just want to give Jason some credit really quick on this whole show, because we came up with this idea driving back from Crested Butte last summer, and we started just, spitballing on the synchronicities between our different materials. And we went, wow, this is actually really mind blowing. We could even make a show out of this. And Jason was like, I'm on it. We're going to do it. I'm buying all the equipment. We're going to film it, produce it. I'll hire the best editors available and we'll launch it. And he literally did. He literally went home and dropped like $25,000 to buy an epic podcast studio, hire producers and editors. And he put this show together that is like better than anything I've seen on Gaia quality wise. I mean, it is incredible, man, what Jason pulled off with this show. So he's doing stuff like this all the time. He just launched UNIFYD Social, which is the first ever free, non-advertisement, non-investment funded social media platform, no censorship. I've been on there for a few months now. It's a gorgeous platform, really easy to use and figure out. It does everything Facebook does. And I mean, he's just pioneering so much stuff right now for the new earth. So please, if you like what Jason's doing, support him, sign up for UNIFYD, and get all this amazing content that he's been putting together on the platform for well over a year now.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. That means a lot. I appreciate it.
Of course, my brother.
I second that. So
thank you. Thank you. I love you guys. Seriously.
All right. Anything else before we go?
I think we did it.
All right. Excellent. So
good.
Episode 1 dropping tomorrow. It's going to be epic. It'll be on my channel, probably Brandon's. You'll catch it on UNIFYD. If you like it, you can sign up for UNIFYD and watch all 8 episodes. Super pumped on it.
Yeah. And look out for the link, Aaron. You'll be posting it in this video in the description.
Yeah. And it's in all the trailers you've seen me post on YouTube. The one I posted earlier today will have it as well. So should be easy to find.
I think we can also post like at least the beginning before it gets into like the deep stuff of each episode. We could take like the first.
Yeah, we can post little clips maybe.
And I'll always put it out. Yeah.
Before we start talking about the Illuminati and stuff.
Before we go into that stuff.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right. I love you guys. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah. Love you guys. This was awesome. Thanks for showing up and all your great words and engagement.
Yeah. I love you all as well.